So lately I've been seeing a lot of people comparing Battlefield 5 to Hell Let Loose, and I mean, fair enough, they're both World War II shooters, right? But if you check out the comment sections of a lot of Hell Let Loose videos, you'll see people commenting stuff like, I wish Battlefield 5 was more like this game or whatever. The problem is though, if you've played either of them, you'll realise how ridiculous that is, because they're both completely different types of games. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. What is the difference between Hell Let Loose and Battlefield 5? Well guys, this is BillyEatWorld again, and let's find out. Alright, so to kick off, like I said, both of these games are so different that I really think it actually kind of makes it unfair to compare them head to head. Because I mean, sure, both of them are set in World War II and they're both large-scale combined arms shooters, but that's about all they've really got in common. For example, Hell Let Loose has got a max player cap of 100 versus Battlefield 5 64, so that should give you a pretty good idea that Hell Let Loose is set on a much larger scale. And most importantly, it's going to be pretty obvious once you get into them that Hell Let Loose takes itself a lot more seriously, and it's less focused on run and gun action. Also, another important thing is that the pacing of these games is completely different as well, not just because of the movement speed, but because of how you have to play them. Because, for example, unlike in Battlefield, there's no spotting in Hell Let Loose at all, and that means you have to slow down and watch out for movement if you want to find your targets. And also, I should mention that in this game, most of the time one bullet is enough to get a kill, which means if you do make a mistake, you probably won't get a second chance. And when you do get killed, you can wait 30 seconds or more to respawn, and believe me, that's a lot of incentive to not run around in the open like you would in a Battlefield game. Now, with that being said, if you are someone who likes a challenge and a bit more authenticity, well, in that respect, I think Hell Let Loose has got Battlefield beat by a mile. For example, the in-game cosmetics all look and feel realistic, there's faction-locked weapons, and the maps are all based on real historical battlefields. But on the other hand though, that also means there's almost no customization, and if the server you're trying to join is full, well, you might not even get a choice in what weapon you get to use. And so it really depends on what kind of player you are. Are you the kind of player who needs to be able to customize their loadout, or can you actually live without that? Also, another big difference I should mention is that whereas Battlefield 5 took the angle of telling the untold stories of World War II, Hell Let Loose has taken the opposite approach. I mean, the first two factions in the game are the USA and the Germans, so the most obvious ones, and unlike in BF5, all of their classic weapons like the M1 Garand are already playable in-game. With that being said though, that also means that we're probably not going to get a lot of the weirder World War II guns added to Hell Let Loose that we already have available in Battlefield 5. And look, if you're a history buff, that might actually be a positive for you, but for the average player, what it probably translates into is that Hell Let Loose, in the long run, is going to have a much smaller playable weapon list. Now, speaking of weapons and gear, well, obviously a big part of any combined arms game are the vehicles, and once again, both of these games take a completely different approach. To begin with, Hell Let Loose doesn't have any player-controlled aircraft at all. Instead, the way you call in air support is through the commander role, which is similar to how reinforcements work in Battlefield 5. Also, the way players control ground vehicles in Hell Let Loose is completely different as well. There's dedicated vehicle squads which need to work together to crew the tanks. And so if you're the kind of vehicle player who likes to lone wolf, well, just forget about it. Unfortunately, it's not going to work in this game. And that actually brings me to the next point, which is that another huge draw card of Hell Let Loose is that it's much more focused on teamwork and working with your squad. It's a game that's less about shooting things and more about the immersion of working as a team, which is one reason why lone wolfing just isn't that fun in the first place. It's not really as full on as, say, games like Squad or Postscriptum. You can still kind of go off and do your own thing, but the whole idea is that the class roles are supposed to support each other. And unlike in BF5, the game actually has ways to stop you from going off and camping on your own, like for example with the sniper kit, which you can't even select until someone has already taken the role of the spotter. Now, that's a lot of the nuts and the bolts differences out of the way, but the real elephant in the room at the moment is that a lot of people in the Battlefield community feel like BF5 is lacking content. And so, I don't know, maybe you might be looking for a new World War II shooter like Hell Let Loose to keep you occupied while BF5 gets a few more updates. And look, if that is the case, then this one is definitely a good option. You just need to understand that at the end of the day, it is an indie game. And even though BF5 might have a lot less content than it probably should, it's not like Hell Let Loose is going to have any more. Like, for example, it's only got 4 maps in the game currently, and only a total of 14 playable weapons. One thing I will say about indie shooter studios in general, though, is that most of the time they are more willing to make drastic changes to their game if the community asks for it. Whereas I think with AAA studios like DICE, sometimes they have content schedules mapped out years in advance, which can mean a long time waiting for seemingly small improvements. And that actually kind of brings me to an interesting point, which is that unlike, say, Battlefield 5, which will move on to the next game in 2020, Hell Let Loose will probably continue to evolve. And look, if it ends up being anywhere near as successful as a game like Squad, its player base might still be growing in, say, 3 or 4 years, which will be well after content support has been dropped for BF5. Now, to finish up, bearing everything I've said in mind, it might seem like I'm bashing Hell Let Loose a bit in this video, but look, I'm not. I actually really like this game a lot. You just need to understand that indie shooters aren't the same as AAA shooters. They may do some things better, but on the whole, they're going to be pretty niche. A really good way to put it would be that Battlefield is trying to cater for as many people as possible from all different backgrounds all around the world, whereas Hell Let Loose has really only got its specific player base in mind. And so sure, you can personally think that Battlefield 5 would be better if it was more like a game like Hell Let Loose, and you know what, I might even agree with you, but I'm pretty sure millions of other players wouldn't. Does that mean that Battlefield can't learn lessons from indie games like this? Well, of course not, but maybe that's a topic for another video. But on the whole, I think what we've found from Battlefield 5 over the last few months especially is that games really need to stay true to what their fans expect them to be. Would I like to see what a DICE-produced 50-50 tactical shooter would look like? Of course I would, but I'm also 100% sure that if they slapped the Battlefield logo on it, like kind of what happened with Hardline, they'd get absolutely destroyed by the majority of Battlefield fans who know what a Battlefield game should be and what it shouldn't be. But anyway, guys, that just about wraps up this video, so hopefully it gives you something to think about if you're looking to buy either of these games. And look, I know I haven't covered every single point of difference in this video. That wasn't really the point. So if you've got anything that you want to add, make sure you leave that down below, because I'm sure people would be interested in reading that. As always, though, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and please feel free to check out the links in the description if you want to see any more of these videos. And also, don't forget you can find my Twitter and Discord links down there as well if you want to keep in touch. And as always, until next time, see you later, and have a good one.